How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be returning to this Universal Monsters Mummy Pack to talk about Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy. This is from 1955 and is directed by Charles Lamont, and of course stars Bud Abbott and Lou Costello. A brief, non-spoilery summary of this movie: we get this guy named Professor Zoomer, and he's found the mummy of Clarice, not Karis this time around, Clarice with an L. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's a different mummy. I guess because this is the wacky silly mummy, we're gonna change his name slightly and make this into the comedy version. Some people think it's just a continuity error. I think they're trying to suggest this is a different but similar mummy. Anyway, he's found the mummy, and there's a legend that there's a treasure tied to this mummy, that he's supposed to be guarding this treasure of an Egyptian princess, and that's going to put several factions into play. For example, there's a cult of people worshipping this mummy, and they're going to be trying to get him and the medallion back. And there's also a femme fatale character who has her goons with her, and she's going to be trying to get the treasure and inadvertently having to deal with the mummy that guards it. Then of course you have Abbott and Costello, who are wandering through Egypt for some reason. Yeah, I'm not really sure why Abbott and Costello happen to be in Egypt. They do vaguely reference in like a scene or two that they want to get back home to the States, but, you know, it's never really explained. They're just in Egypt, you know, the classic comedy characters that just happen to wander into something bigger. But anyway, they hear Professor Zoomer talk about needing some people to help out now that he's found the mummy, and they go to his house looking for work, only to find him murdered. But they also find the medallion that leads the way to the treasure, and that inadvertently puts them in the middle of this whole plot, you know? The femme fatale will get them in the medallion, and the cult will get the mummy back, and they both head on a beeline back to the mummy's tomb, where, you know, they're going to cross paths with each other and wacky antics will ensue. Now, I know that this isn't considered the best Abbott and Costello movie, and it's not considered the best of the Universal crossovers. A lot of people say that's the Frankenstein one. I mean, that one I think also has Dracula and the Wolfman in it, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've seen that one. But even though this isn't considered one of their best, and this is actually one of the later Abbott and Costello pictures, and in turn things are slipping through the cracks, like Abbott and Costello regularly call each other by their real names instead of their character names, and it's kind of weird when you look at the credits and you see, oh, they were actually playing characters. I thought they were just playing themselves because they call each other Abbott and Costello. But despite all that, this is one that I've always really liked. And granted, I know that this is not a completely unbiased point of view. When I was a kid, I watched a ton of Abbott and Costello. I've probably seen most of them, or at least most of them that were readily available on video when I was a kid, and I watched these things all the time, and my favorites were always the ones where they cross paths with the Universal monsters. So in turn, Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, I've seen this movie so many times when I was a kid, and as I was watching it, there's all these little things and little gags that I remembered, and I really do love it. Abbott and Costello play off of each other really well. You know, Abbott is always got to put up with Costello, and Costello will always be, you know, doing something weird or silly, and you're like, wait, what's he? Oh, no, don't do that. And then, you know, Abbott will, you know, he's the serious one, but he'll still try to go on some, you know, little thing if it means he thinks he'll get money or something. And yeah, the two are just a really good comedy duo. Again, personality-based comedy has a tendency to hold up really well and not age too terribly bad. And yeah, Abbott and Costello movies, I don't know, I mean, they're like, what, 70, 80 years old by this point, but I think for the most part they still really do hold up pretty well. And watching this again, there's so many, like, you know, classic scenes that I remember from when I watched this when I was way younger. For example, when they go in Professor Zoomer's house to find him murdered, they do this gag where Costello will see the professor's dead body and it will spook him and he runs away, but the cultists that killed him are always moving it, so, you know, Abbott never believes him that it was there, and then wherever Costello goes, this dead body appears. And as a kid, I remember that being, you know, kind of a scary thought, constantly running into this dead body and no one believing you, but it's still pretty funny. So, you know, as an early taste of, like, dark and morbid humor for me, the idea that, you know, you would just open up a door and there'd be a dead body there again, you know, so I always thought that was really funny. You know, there's this gag, a run-on joke throughout the movie where whenever Costello plays a flute, because, you know, the snake charmer motif, when he plays a flute, there'll always be a snake that pops out of some pot. And it's like snakes are in every pot in Egypt or something, just waiting for him, because there'll always be one waiting there. And it happens over and over again throughout the film, just how far can we push this same bit, you know? And then there's other stuff, like, you know, they show the medallion to a local, and the local says, "Oh, it's cursed. It means death to whoever holds it." So all of a sudden, Abbott and Costello don't want the medallion anymore, and they do this bit where they're trying to pawn it off on each other, you know. They're leaning in to say something, and they'll drop the medallion in each other's pockets, and then they do this gag where they'll, you know, hide it in their burger, and they keep switching the burgers back and forth, and Costello will accidentally eat it, and you get this really long shot of him chewing it, and you hear all this middle crunching sounds, and it's just this, you know, kind of weird, surreal thing. But I always remember him eating the burger with the medallion in it, and he definitely doesn't take a big enough bite to swallow the whole thing, but that's what's supposed to be happening, you know. And yeah, that always stuck in my head as a kid, you know. Another thing that I really loved, you know, even on a rewatch, is when you get to the tomb at the end. It's this big, big, crazy set with tons of trapdoors, you know, always really great to have, you know, mysterious hidden passages and other weird things, you know, like a skeleton that's hidden in the walls that Costello finds, or this giant lizard that's there for literally no reason but to have a few gags and to show off old-timey special effects work. But lots of really, you know, really crazy stuff in this temple, and I remember it being big. You don't really know who's wandering where, and you could take a wrong turn at any moment and find the cultist. This was always just a really, really good set with me, and I remember, you know, Costello would get so scared, he'll run so fast, and it's got smooth tile floor, and you really just see him sliding on the floor so many times in this movie. And yeah, there's a good bit of slapstick humor there, you know. Like, for example, one of the trapdoors, for whatever reason, is like 12, 15 feet off the ground into the room it leads to, and all these people fall through this trapdoor, and you see them crash to the ground. And then, like, this is the mummy, and they, you know, see it, and they'll knock it out by hitting it on the head with a stick, and which is, yeah, I don't know of any other Universal monster you really do that with, but poor Clarice, you know, you see him and you can bop him on the back of the head, and I don't know, it's just kind of hilarious to me. Yeah, it makes him less scary, but, you know, they open up the tomb, the mummy gets up, and they're like, ah! But anyway, yeah, really, really fun slapstick here. and there's just a ton of energy, a ton of moving pieces and characters. It's really, really fast-paced. I mean, yeah, it's an old-timey Universal movie. There'll be a few song numbers to slow it down, and I remember when I was a kid, I was always like, the songs are back on. I think this movie only has a couple of them, you know, and I think one's actually more of an acrobatic act. But for the most part, very fast. Tons and tons of jokes. You know, whenever they're shooting anything, they're always going to think of a wacky joke to be happening on screen. You know, for the most part, this movie is just filled with jokes, and there's tons of really clever and inventive ideas. I remember very distinctly there's a scene where the femme fatale character is trying to get the medallion from Costello, and she invites him to a private dining room in this restaurant, and she's rigged up the dining room with a bunch of secret things to try to swipe the medallion from him. So there'll be like a bunch of little holes hidden throughout the room that hands will come out of and try to grab at him. And it was just such this surreal concept, you know. She'd knock on the table and a hand would come out of the floor and feel around trying to find the medallion or the money or something. And yeah, just a great, weird, surreal scene. But that being said, this one is definitely not without its flaws. And, you know, I see why some people have really critiqued this movie. And one of the big flaws, sadly, is the mummy. This particular mummy, Clarice, is probably the least scary and threatening of the Universal monsters. Again, referring specifically to Clarice, not Karis or Imhotep. But, yeah, this mummy, it's, you know, gets up, it's really slow, and it limps around, and it's got this weird face, you know, this big mouth, and they like, drink the water, Clarice. But yeah, he's not the scariest, and part of me thinks that may be because they know they're doing a comedy, and they know lots of kids like Abbott and Costello, so it may just be they're like, hey, we're not really trying to be scary here. This is kind of a sillier mummy, you know? And the costume, especially on Blu-ray, you can tell it's really just one piece, like a jumpsuit that they've covered in bandages so they can just slide the actor in and out a lot easier. And yeah, he's not the best looking mummy here, and also not in the movie too terribly much. This is going to be one of those creatures that's at the beginning of the movie and then at the end, and throughout the middle, wacky shenanigans with thieves and cultists, you know? So it's still fun even when he's not there. You still do have the Egyptian setting, but sadly, not a lot of time with this particular mummy. And then also, yeah, that cult. They're, for whatever reason, led by a really boring British guy. I don't know why he's the leader. I guess they made him British because he has to pretend to be a British archaeologist student later. I don't know, but he's kind of just, you know, like how did this random boring British guy become the head of an Egyptian cult that worships a mummy? I'm not entirely sure. And how, like, what are they trying to do? That's another thing, you know? What are they trying to do? Are they trying to empower this mummy so that he can, like, rule the world in a reign of terror? That would be evil. But are they just trying to protect it, you know? Is this just self-defense? Do they want to preserve their history and treasure? Like, I'm not really sure, because that, you know, if they're just trying to protect the mummy, that's not really too bad. If they didn't, you know, kill Dr. Zoomer, they really wouldn't be that bad of guys. But if they're trying to have a mummy reign of terror, okay, that's bad. But what are they really trying to do? And, you know, how bad is this cult? I wish their motivations were made clearer. But, you know, there is kind of a funny thing where towards the end of the movie itself kind of realizes this, and there's this, I won't spoil it, but a really funny let's let bygones be bygones ending, which I thought, you know, really kind of came out of nowhere, and it is pretty silly. But overall, I get saying that this one's not the best, and I get liking the other Abbott and Costello Meet the Universal Monsters better, But this, again, I think it still holds up. I think there's a ton of fun gags, a ton of fun energy, and it moves pretty fast. I mean, it's only like 80 some odd minutes, I think. And overall, you know, not the scariest Universal monster, but I don't know, fun Abbott and Costello gags. There's also criticisms where people will say Abbott and Costello repeat their gags a little too often. Like if you watch the other movies, you might see them there. But that really is a flaw by time and perspective, because back in the day, you know, no YouTube and no home video meant that if you wanted to see the gag again, Abbott and Costello would put it in another movie. You know, it's either wait for the theaters to decide to show their old ones again, or they would have to do it again in their next movie. You know, rewatchability wasn't as much of a thing, so if people can't watch this famous bit of yours again super easy, just do it again in the next movie. So yeah, that's part that doesn't really hold up, but that's more based on our perspective and how we consume media now. But overall, I think, you know, even if it's not the best, definitely a powerful nostalgic trip for me. Young Zach watched this movie so often, and older, grown-up Zach still likes it really well, even though he can acknowledge that, you know, this isn't the best one. Anyway, definitely recommend it. To everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my classic, Universal, and modern reboot playlist. So if you want to see me talk about more of the Universal monsters, you should find them here. And I did do a review for the first Mummy movie as well, so you can find that one, although I think it is a little bit of an older review. But yeah, fun movie. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.